G'day viewers and everyone who's showed up today. Today we've got Regan continuing his little series on building modern user interfaces for Microsoft Access. And today he's going to show us around Metro Studio and how to use that to find icons that might be useful, and then how to whiz them all up and get them into your Access apps. So take it away, Greg.
Thanks very much, Kent, and thanks everyone for joining. And our presentations for Access User Groups, and the theme has always been about interface design. When we have an interface, you've often got a choice of a text-based interface or an image-based interface. And when we talk about image-based, we're typically talking about icons. So on screen, I've got an example of a text-based interface, an example of an icon-based interface. Text-based versus image-based, I have a preference for image-based. It's not a hard rule because sometimes a text-based interface is appropriate. It might be for a screen that's not used very often or by a technical user. But typically, I prefer an image-based or icon-based interface. And I believe it's just faster to use once you're used to it. Of course, the challenge is the first few times that the user is using that application is what do the icons mean. So as I hover over these icons, but if I hover over them, you'll have a tooltip that will explain what it is. And of course, after you've used the icon a few times, those icons will start to mean something without you having to have the text assistance. So I prefer icons. I think they're better. The challenge that we have to create a nice image-based is we're developers and we're not designers. So I have made my own icons from scratch, but ideally it'd be great if we could get them. So where do we get world-class icons? So SyncFusion has a free software called Metro Studio. It creates other products as well. But it's got a completely free icon studio called Metro Studio. And as you can see on the right-hand side, they have over 7,000 flat and wireframe icons, and we'll come to that terminology a little bit later, but it's got over 7,000. So Metro Studio, what we'll do is first is categories. So let me bring up, just familiarizing ourselves with the interface, but I'll bring up the interface first. The first thing I want you to look at is down the left-hand side where you'll see categories. So the icons, they're categorized. The first one we find them is from categories. So if one of these topics or categories on the left matched the application you were doing, you could click on those and find a series of icons. I've got wireframe and flat here. There's two types of icons they have. It's more about the style. Wireframe means a very minimalist style of icon, and flat might be a little bit more detailed. So I typically, my default is wireframe, but if I go into flat here, you'll find a whole lot of brand names, brand icons that you might be able to use, things like Facebook, browsers, things like Excel. If you wanted to have your Access application open a spreadsheet, you might put in an Excel icon there. So the next thing, search. Okay, so for example, I might type in the word computer and then hit enter, and it'll go and search for related icons there. So maybe I might have a word for exit. I just for consistency, I try to stick to wireframe and use a very minimalist style of icon. So that's how we search for icons. The other thing that we're going to look at is projects. So what we'll be trying to do after we do the Metro Studio sort of tour is actually use it to create this very simple menu interface. So that's what we're getting to. So what we're trying to do is find the icons, color them, and then add them to our Access form. Okay. So what we want to do is group the icons together when we find them into a project, and typically that would be a client project. Here I've got a number of projects I've done in the past. So the next thing that we want to consider is the colors. So if we go back to this Metro Studio interface, you'll notice that the icons are always white. And then once we've selected them and put them in our project, and you'll see the projects at the bottom, you've added them to one of those projects, then we want to color them accordingly. Where do we get the colors from? If you go to your browser and search for something like color palettes, you get a number of entries that come up that you can play with. There's a really nice website that I like that has color palettes called Coolors on screen there. You can go and play with that. And you can basically search, as it says on the left, you can generate palettes, explore palettes. Of course, they've got a paid option and they've got a free option. What's nice about it is it will bring up colors that complement each other, because often you'll see in Access developers' designs. Another way that I look for color inspiration is just to do a search on Power BI dashboard templates, and then I've clicked on images in the browser and you just find some ideas. So I'm not looking at their actual design, the arrangement of their icons and charts, etc. I'm just looking at colors that might work well together. So that's another way that we actually get those colors, because we're going to have to get the actual hex code of the color. Now, the other consideration might be that the client actually wants the application branded in their colors. The way to get the color codes once you've found them is using color pickers. And the one I was having a discussion with Kent, one of the free sort of browser add-ons you can get is called ColorZilla. I use Edge browser. That didn't come up, but what did come up was this. So the idea is that once you've found something, if you were to find these colors, you would click that add-on, and then hover over it and click, and it will give you the color. So let's do a little demo of using Metro Studio to create those icons for our interface. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, what we're going to try and do is something like this. So the first step we're going to do is search for the relevant icons. Let me go to my Access interface, and what I've got on screen is the mock-up subform, and with a placeholder for the icons that we're going to put on the report. When we're finished, it will look something like this. So I've placed the images where I want them, but of course they don't have the correct image. That's what we're going to do now. When we're using these images, obviously when you click them, something has to happen. So is going to that click event. You'd be clicking on that and then writing your code in there to tell it. And that's an alternative to your command button. So, and I don't like putting images into command buttons. They don't play very well. The way that you add an image to your form is to go to Form Design, the Form Design menu option up here, and you've got here Image, and you would just then click on your form like that, and then it will ask you to go and tell it where the image is. Okay, fine. What we'll then do is add a project now. So let's go to Metro Studio, and it says create new project. So I'm going to put my client name is Acme, and so I'm just going to call it WH, click enter. Okay, now I have a blank project. So next thing is I want to search for the images that will correspond to these icons. So the first thing I'm going to search on is information. Got my icon there, the one that I want. So what I'll just hover over it and I drag it onto the relevant project. Now, if the way I edit icons once they're inside the project is to hover above that project and click the edit icon there. When I do, this window pops up and there's my icon inside there. Let's just close that and we'll add a few more. So the next one we're looking for is setting. There's the settings icon that I'd like to use. Next one is volume. Actually, I'm going to go for that one. So I will drag that onto my project. So now in my Metro Studio project, I have the 4 icons that I want. Now color these icons and process them the way that we want. Okay. So let me go back into my Access interface, and you'll notice that I've created some frames here with the heading on them. So I've got a label that I want. I've actually got a frame here. And I've already played with this as a sandbox and come up with the colors I want. So how do I get those colors into my Metro Studio icons? So all I need to do is go to my label, click Format, click the font icon, okay, the drop down, and it doesn't show the color code, but what we do is go down to more colors at the bottom and make sure we're clicking on the custom tab here, and at the bottom you've got the hex code. So what I'm going to do is Control C, and then we'll go back to Metro Studio. And what I'm going to do is highlight all of those, okay, and you have this option down here, icon color, and I'm going to, and then paste. Now, one little thing that might interest you is that the hex codes are actually 8 characters, not 6. It doesn't matter. Paste in your 6-character hex code, hit enter, and you'll see all of those icons are colored the same. The other thing that I like to do is make my backgrounds transparent. So if you look at here, we have a background color option, and we could make them round. Let me just change the color of that so that you can actually see what's happening, because against the black it's a bit hard. So I'll just make it a different color there just so you can see what's happening. So highlighting all of those, we have a solid round background we could have. We could have an outline round background, square background. I choose no background because I want the background to be my form background. I prefer to go high resolution with my icons, even though they might end up being quite small in my interface. It doesn't matter the file sizes, even at this size, which is my preferred size, are very small. It's not going to make your program any heavier, and it's more likely that you'll get nice round edges that are not pixelated. So I prefer to go with a high res. And the other thing I do is I take out the padding. Now, when you do that, it looks a bit weird, right? Because you can't see the icon. Now, I don't know a way around that, but what I want to do if I do want to see the icon just in development is I can just do this, take the padding back down, and I can see what the icon's about. And before I produce it, I'll put it back. Let's go back to the next series of icons, and we'll do this quickly. Time, warning, and chart. Sort of a clock icon. Oh, yeah, that's the one I want. I'll drag that on there. We want warning. And the other one we wanted was chart. And we've got our pie chart there. I'm going to grab that in. So now I've got to color those. What do? I go back to my access form. I click on the label where I've already chosen my color. Go to the icon, drop down from the format menu, hit more colors, go to custom, go to the bottom, highlight the hex code, all of it, Control C, cancel, and we'll go back into our project. As we add new icons to the project, Metro Studio assumes that you want all of the colors to be the same color. So after you've colored your first icon and you add future ones, it will color them identically. But what we're going to do is change that color. So we're going to select the 3 that we want. I'll hold my shift key to select them all. We just go down to here, the color icon, and it's the same color as the paste in our new color, and bang, we've got our mauve or purple colored icons. And we've basically done. We've got our icons for our interface. And we'll highlight those and make sure that the padding is 0 on all of these and 256 pixels, so we're all good. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is save that, and we want to highlight all of those, and you can just hit Control-Alt, click anywhere in there, Control-A. Okay, we want to export them, and then what you want to do in your Windows is have a dedicated folder for that client project that you've got. So I'm going to hit Export, and I've already created a folder there called Acme Warehousing, and I'm going to click. It will immediately actually open that folder where you exported the icons to, and they're all sitting there ready to go. Okay, so let's go back to our Access interface to get these icons into the interface, and we'll go with the first one. If I refer back to our cheat sheet, it's information, and what I'll do there is I'll select the icon. We need the property sheet open, which we get from form design, and then property sheet, we have that open, and then we'll go to the picture and we'll click this and an icon there. We want information, click it, okay, bang, comes up. The next one that we want is a cogwheel setting. Click that, okay. We'll click our next settings icon, which we want to be a slider icon, and we want a volume icon. Okay, so now we've done our settings submenu. Do our reports. We want the clock. We want the warning, and we want the bar chart. There's our menu, and there was what we were trying to reproduce. That's one I'd created earlier, and here's the demo that we've just done. So we've got our settings. We've got our settings submenu, report submenu. I put a little sandbox here, and the reason is that I've chosen icons without padding, and the icons are all basically fitting a square. They're all gonna the tops and the bottoms of the icons all touch the actual top and bottom of the image. That means that they all line up nicely, but some images within the icons are not always exactly square. There might be landscape or portrait, and it means when you're trying to line them up, it's not as easy. You've got to do it. You've got to do a few little tricks to do it individually. Let's just close that down, and that'll take us back to design view, and I'll just move through. So what we've looked at is how we get the colors, and there's just some screenshots there to guide you through that. At this point, I'll come back to that sandbox idea where we'll do some maybe non-conforming icons that are, say, landscape or portrait.
I noticed that you're embedding those images in the image control rather than sharing them.
That's just the way I do it, but you'd probably be better placed to talk about the other options. Let's just go back to that interface to show everybody what we're talking about there. If we click an icon, you've got picture types here, okay, and I always use embedded, and you've got linked and shared it, and to be honest, I've never used them. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Kent, and the advantages, disadvantages of those picture types?
Shared, you're actually using the gallery within the Access project itself. So if you go
Yeah.
up under the ribbon where you've got insert image, and you drop that
Yeah,
down, you'll be able to see your
yeah,
image gallery. No, to the right. So
yeah,
there's your image gallery.
yeah, okay. Oh, okay, I've just, yep, gotcha, okay.
The advantage I see to using the image gallery is if you have an icon that you want to put on each form, you only have to include it in the project one time and then use the same image from the image gallery. So instead of
Yes.
10 copies of the image, you have one.
But see here how you've got that as embedded and you've got the image there. Now, if you change that image embedded to shared, now if you go and have a look in the gallery,
Yep. Okay.
no, that's left.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah,
There it is.
there it is. Yep, bang. That's nice. And you can browse there to add others into the gallery and then reuse them. Yep.
So yeah, Greg, if you click on that image now, you can click that and then you can put it anywhere on your page.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
there it is.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned something. I'm glad I turned up.
Oh, good.
What I'll sometimes do is actually have a blank form, which I never use, and those images that I'm going to reuse, I'll just plonk them on there and then cut and paste them into a new form when I need them. Certainly to me.
So you've got a command button there.
Yes, I have.
And the command buttons don't handle images quite as nicely.
Correct.
So I can see very much why you use an image control rather than the command button.
Yeah, you've got to, from what my experience is, you've got to really resize the images down before you use them. And I'm just thinking, why do I have to bother with that?
Well, and
I've got a click event.
That then screws up depending on your user's resolution and scale.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very hard to predict what it's going to look like on a user machine.
Correct. So I just...
Your image control, you're using zoom as the...
Yeah, so that's another good point. So there we go, size mode zoom.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can play with all of that. But
and you said that you can actually put padding in there?
I believe so. So I think you can play with this down here. Well, the other way you can get padding is then to add if you go to format, you could also add a shape outline and increase the outline size and make it transparent, or play with, or make it the same as your background here. So there's ways to do it. I just don't do it because I just resize my icons accordingly. For example, I want a little bit of a gap from the icon to the frame that I've got here, that frame there. So I don't need padding. I just moved a few pixels away.
Also had your padding section settings in the Icon Studio you were just looking at before. So you can save with the padding.
Yeah, so exactly, you could do your padding there and then just bring it in straight without padding, and it'll be... I'll skip down to your image click event. So we just talked about a command button versus using an image. Well, I don't see you're at any disadvantage in using your image, in the sense that you can just use its click event to write whatever code that you need. And I'm actually using also a mouse move event on that for my pop-up tooltip that I have here. The thing about the command buttons is you got some functionality out of the box when you add them. So I talked about characters as icons, so you can use Metro Studio to create character icons. Wireframe versus flat. Wireframe means a very minimalist style of image, and as I mentioned earlier, that's my
it's more an
preference.
outline type image, and that seems
Correct.
to be what Microsoft have been going to with their icons for like the ribbon and what have you. Well, the question really is, can you mix and match, or is it best to have them all the same?
Yeah, I mean and that's... I'm looking for consistency within the, it's no point doing all the colors and the sizing and then your images look as if they have come from a different place or don't belong together. So, but it's nice that Metro Studio divides those two styles up. I think that's really good.
Okay. You were going to cover using paired images.
So what I'm talking about there is, let's go back to our Metro Studio and we'll go into our project, which we're already there. Now let's say that, let's take the warning icon, and I'll re-add that icon again. Okay. So I'll add it again. I'll have a new version of that icon. And what I'm going to do is choose a color that will be kind of a grayish color, which I'm going to call a disabled color. And of course I want it to be resized as all the other, same as all of the other icons, 256 pixels, 0 padding. And I want to take its background away. And I'll save that and I will export it. Okay, pops up and we have that there. So we have two versions of the same icon. One's live and one would indicate that the icon is actually not functional. Let's do that in the Access interface. So what I'll do is I'll just Control C, Control V, I'll just take it down here, do that again, V, okay, and I'll change this icon, and then what I'll do is arrange, align. So let's just do that. The way I do it is just highlight them both. They've got to be overlapping a little bit first, highlight them both, align, say, to the top or the bottom, it doesn't matter, and then align to the left. And then now, so imagine that in your database, there's a table for ongoing alerts, and there aren't any. Okay, so you don't want the user clicking that and then a message popping up saying there's nothing to look at. What you prefer is that when you load the form, it looks at the table to see if that table has any alerts, and if it didn't, it would show this icon, and if there were alerts, it would show that icon. So when you open the form or you hit, say, a refresh button, it would just go through it would just return, time 0 or more than 0, warnings more than 0, and based on the result in that record set, it would just either enable this icon.
Seems to me to be much more reliable than trying to use command buttons and fiddling with the images on those.
Did anyone want to have a look at sort of landscape and portrait icons and then the challenge that you have? So the nice thing that we have here is that all of those icons, the tops and the bottoms, line up because they're all basically square icons. So I had to do very little. All I had to do was click them all and then arrange and align to top and bang. But if the icons here, say for example, if they were landscape, the tops might not necessarily line up. So then you might have to do some tricks to get that going. That's just a matter of resizing.
So you still keep the image controllers square?
Yes. Yes. So it's a really good question. If you go back into the Metro Studio, and this is something I didn't look at, is that you'll notice when I'm hitting this, regardless of the icon that I pull in, regardless of its shape, the default shape is square. So it's whatever you choose here is for both the height and the width. Okay, so if I choose that 256, but you do have a custom button and you can actually overwrite that. I've never used that, the custom option, simply because actually getting the tops and the bottoms to hit the edges of the image in the icon is not that easy. So I prefer to sort of just take it into Access and do some resizing there to make it look the same. And the way I would do that, because we've got transparent backgrounds, I can see where the top of the icon is, and I could use something like a frame to visually line the top of that icon there with that frame. Here I don't have to do it. I know they're all going to line up because the image hits the top of the icon, but here it doesn't. You see that icon there? So I could line it up visually and you see using Control and up arrow until it looked like it was right, and I could resize it if I needed to make it look roughly the same as the other icons. So there's some tricks you can do there, but I would do it in Access. So let's go back to the Access interface, and we'll make one of these icons that laptop, which is a landscape, and let's just explore that. that idea, see what happens. So we'll choose laptop, and we're on the zoom setting. So it's taken what I understand it does. It takes it either to the widest or the tallest, whichever one fits within the shape of the image that you've got. So what I'm trying to say now, if I was trying, so that is actually the same size as those other images, but it doesn't look right. So if I was trying to line here, speaker, and I'll go there, Control V, and I want to line these up. Well, they don't look quite right. The icons are the same size, but the images are not. Because I've got transparent backgrounds, I can just float over the top of that, and I'll go to the top of the actual speaker, and then I could just resize. I could just resize it until the bottom of the laptop equals the bottom of the speaker. And as I do that, there's a bit of manipulation you've got to do. But in terms of just getting it lined up, you could do something like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Zoom limits one direction, so
Okay.
it keeps the proportion, whereas stretch will just stretch both dimensions.
Yeah.
And clip just makes it the actual size that it is.
Yes. So stretch, yeah, not nice. What I'm trying to say, you can kind of play around with this. You might want to actually limit it, use a combination of the customs dimensions in Metro Studio to get it roughly to the shape, and then you've got sort of minimal sort of resizing to do in Access. But that's one of the challenges when you're not using square icons, which is often the case. You've got to.
Okay, so the upshot is that you want to figure out something that works for you and then stick to it.
Yeah.
Another disadvantage when you're zooming or when you're making it bigger like that is also makes the border width wider.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So the footprint of your icon is maybe wider than you want it to be, which could be problematic. So if I go here, I talked about it earlier, like, okay, you find an image online, but you've got to get its hex color. So what I've done here is I've done a search. I'm looking for inspiration. I've done a search on Power BI templates, and I want to actually now steal the colors off that dashboard. And again, just to emphasize, when I'm looking at dashboards, I don't care about the design. I'm just looking whether the colors might play well together. And let's just have a look at this one. So what I'll say, oh, I like that sort of pie chart. So what I'll do is I'll click my add-on there, tab color picker, and pick color. Okay. And it actually, if you look up here, the color's now changed in that icon, and you've actually got your hex code there. So I can use that tool, and there are others there, other free options. Kent likes Colorzilla, is that right, for Chrome?
Yeah, that's an add-on. But generally, when I get a new client, the first thing I do is go to their website and steal their color pattern from their website and put that into a normal template form.
Yes.
Form that's usually named template. You can change that in settings, but it's usually normal. And I put a color palette in there that I then use for the application.
I've been using Instant Eyedropper for several years. It's free. I put a link in the chat, and it basically loads in your system tray in the lower, so you can just pop that up, set the options if you want to change how it's storing the color in RGB or hex or whatever. And then the thing I like about it is it's out of the way. It doesn't cover anything on the screen.
So yeah, that's a good one, because from what I can see from this is limited to your browser, but I might have other sources that I want to take it from. What you're saying is your application just looks at anything on your screen, right? It doesn't matter what the application is.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. That was enlightening, and I can really see the advantages of using these pretty image controls, and even though they might be a little bit more fiddly to implement than a command button, they will certainly look a lot better, and it certainly make for a nice interface. So thank you very much, Greg.